My guests today are Mike Malloret, the Technical Director for Public Sector at Veritas Technologies, and Vishal Amin, the General Manager of Security Solutions for Defense at Microsoft Federal. Mike, Vishal, thanks so much for taking the time to join us on the DoD Cloud Exchange.
Thanks for having us.
We've heard so far today a lot about where DoD is going, how they're using the cloud. And I want to start us off with Vish and talking a little bit about what you all are seeing at Microsoft Federal, because there's been this push recently from DoD really to get to top secret cloud options. We know a lot about this IL5, IL6 and supporting the tactical edge. What are some of the things you're seeing? What is the status of this push and where's DoD heading?
That's a great place to start. For us, what we've really been hearing is how do we support the warfighter really at the edge? And I think in the industry, amongst all of the cloud providers, we have this heavy focus on platform or product or what to deliver to our services. What comes first? Is it the collaboration? Is it the security? One of the things that we've been really focused on is not so much moving our own initiatives forward in terms of what is going to be delivered next in our platform, what cloud do we work with the DoD on. It's meeting them where they are at, really taking a hybrid first approach to the initiatives that the defense organizations and agencies have. A great example of this are the current directives around zero trust, the 152 activities that they've put out, and how we as cloud solution providers meet those. Is it in IL4? Is it in IL5? What do we do in IL6 moving forward in those mission clouds? Do we build collaborative pieces there first? Where are the nation state actors headed? Where are they hunting? Where are they working with us? So that's really been our focus, is meeting the Department of Defense and all their agencies where they're currently at. And passing it back and forth to Michael as well, is we have this shared responsibility model that really can split the difference of what is capable, right? Especially when we talk about the tactical edge, where the warfighters are starting to use 5G. We're starting to look at cyberspace. We look at things like Ukrainian efforts, where we saw 22 attacks from a nation state in Redmond a day prior to that conflict kicking off, right? These are things that happen when we start talking about the advanced clouds and the power of the cloud. But that's, scaling it back, not getting ahead of myself here. That is really where our initiatives have been, indifferent of IL5, IL6, and where the government is building, focusing, and collaborating with their warfighters. I think mainly it's us coming to the table and saying, listen, we have a moral responsibility as well to meet you where you are at, versus where we think the industry is going.
And so much of that is being pushed to the edge. We hear this all the time when you talk to Army or Navy or Air Force or whomever. Those folks are saying, how do we ensure that the warfighters have the connectivity, the data, the applications where they need it the most? That's what's driving this, is this understanding that the technology is there to have that at the edge.
Absolutely, Michael. I think this would be a great spot for you to show maybe where you've seen that, historically, and where it's going. I'm happy to build on top of that.
Yeah, so I think there's quite a bit there that we can certainly take a look at. From a Veritas strategy, what we've seen is we announced that we were going to become a reborn in the cloud company. So we've taken our existing software capabilities and we have refactored them and retooled them in order to be able to work not only at the hybrid edge, but also work directly natively in the cloud. In addition to that, we've expanded functionality that allows a tactical edge deployment to actually have data protection locally, as well as send a deduplicated set of that data up to a cloud service provider, and then be able to recover that kind of information or data and applications directly within that cloud service provider. So it's really a great bridge between the private industry, the cloud service providers, and the government, who has a unique requirement with the tactical edge to be able to bring a hybrid solution that allows for resiliency within the environment. We're going to continue to focus on not only delivering these capabilities directly in a hybrid type situation, we also deliver them natively in the cloud today, as well as provide them in the future as a service to our customer base as well.
It's a really good point, Michael, because when you look at like networking, storage, servers, virtualization, OS, right? Like when we start moving into the hybrid side of the house, it allows that lift to come off of the shoulders of all of those traditional on-premises types of workflows that we've had, and really being able to impact the warfighter at the edge. I think one of the things I heard that really impacted me this morning, and it was this morning. We're on a workflow with our defense peers, and there was a conversation about, are we meeting checkboxes, or what is the actual intent at the edge? It's not just to virtualize, it's not just for the redundancy, it's to deploy arms, it's to communicate tactically, it's to go, do our nation's bidding from that warfighter, from those boots on the ground, and to be able to harness the power of the cloud and the power of that interoperability of this hybrid first approach to do that, right? And that goes into the cyberspace, that goes into the threat hunting, that goes into how we defend against nation state attacks. So Michael, I love how you laid that out of reborn into the cloud, because what that shares to me is the same thing that I'm seeing the Department of Defense do now. Is the Department of Defense is harnessing the power of the cloud to take advantage of those trillions of signals available to them, and the infrastructure, the networking, the storage, the redundancy, to actually move that mission set forward.
Yeah, and I think there's a unique opportunity in today's landscape, as you mentioned earlier, with the 5G capability, right? So a lot of times when we did the forward deployments were a unique stack that was a fairly static stack, and there was really no ability for that information, except for very small subsets of that information, to actually be distributed out, right? So there's always been this capability of, when you're working with the warfighter, what information needs to be able to flow out, which one doesn't. And then there's always the realistic volatility of an edge location, right? An edge location could go away. The comms can go away. Certainly there are some wonderful capabilities with 5G that allow you to stand up the infrastructure that allows you to connect to a cellular infrastructure that's somewhat global. The security aspects of it are much improved, much hardened. So it really lends itself well to be able to build out this hybrid infrastructure. So for us, we see this as being a key capability that we bring to our customers, whether it's hybrid edge, whether it's in their primary data centers, or whether they are looking for high availability across clouds, right? So there's a lot that we bring to the table that I think gives our customers unique capabilities. The cloud DR is kind of unique in the backup space. We do it as a continuous data protection. So we can basically predict what our point-in-time recoveries are, usually within 5 minutes. The edge, the latency might actually produce a little bit longer than that. But even if you're only 10, 15 minutes for a recovery point objective, that certainly gives you a real key advantage. And with the cloud infrastructure, it allows for a rather rapid recovery time objective. And it certainly would be possible to actually create the hybrid cloud where the infrastructure was running, so somebody else who's at a remote site could actually see some of the same information that is happening at the edge too.
And then before we turn this over to you, Jason, there's one very important thing that I'd like to add here. Is by doing this as a hybrid first approach, it's not just moving things into the cloud and utilizing the power of the cloud. It's a secure first methodology in doing that, right? And that is the power of clouds like Azure, right? Where you have cross-cloud, multi-cloud, on-premises abilities and services built out to deploy in this hybrid first methodology. So you can put security baselined at the beginning, at the core of what we do, so that we can actually complete these missions.
Well, just want to touch upon one thing, because one of the things that came up is this hybrid cloud idea, and it's been something that every agency is going to live in, hybrid cloud, multi-cloud, for many, many years. But there's also this idea that they have to understand that it's the shared responsibility piece. And I think we should just maybe touch upon that to ensure that agencies know that, hey, just because I'm using Microsoft doesn't mean I'm not responsible for security or whatever their other compliance / important issues. So Vish, I don't know if you want to start us off there about some of those other considerations they should keep in mind as they kind of continue down this cloud journey path.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I mentioned it a little earlier. When you look at like administration, applications, operating system, middleware, server, storage, networking, all of those things shift, I would say, to the left, or however you want to phrase it, to the right or to the left. But the ability to maintain that administrative function doesn't go away in a shared responsibility model. When we move to IaaS, to PaaS, to even SaaS, when we talk about things like Office 365, sure, the cloud service provider can actually uptake that, maintain that. Your costs actually decrease significantly, right? But the responsibility of administering that, putting all of our compliance frameworks and making sure that we're governing it don't go away. But we start with things like networking, storage, servers, virtualization. Those types of things can really, the effort and the ability to take care of those things really can shift over to those major or those cloud service providers as we kind of lean into this hybrid first approach. I know Michael, from the Veritas perspective, has probably some good perspective on shared responsibility as well, especially coming from the networking side of the house.
Yeah, we take it and we kind of look at the top three sections of the shared responsibility model, right? The data is ultimately the responsibility of the customer, right? So from a Veritas perspective, we allow the customers to have portability of their data across environments, right? So that certainly gives us a value added offer to them, whether it's from a hybrid cloud going up to a public cloud, an edge location to a public cloud, or whether, a customer wants to be able to keep a copy of its data on premise, right? We have seen customers who have actually built out cloud infrastructure and want to make sure that if for whatever reason the cloud infrastructure went away, that they would have the ability to recover on site. So those are some of the capabilities that we focus on. We also know that a lot of times problems that occur in the cloud are very often related to human error. So, there's a very large portion of the management of the cloud that is actually the responsibility of the customer. And when you're responsible for accounts and identities, we've seen mass deletions of accounts and identities and groups that have caused some major chaos for customers where they've had to be able to do large scale recoveries. So we focus on the shared responsibility model from that top end, as well as then when you start getting into a mixed shared responsibility. As far as, one of the things that I think Vishal touched on that I'd like to actually elaborate a little is he talked about how the cloud has taken a security first type model, and they've done a wonderful job of being able to have the security controls that are available to the customer to be able to consume, right? The zero trust principles are a design philosophy that we at Veritas take. We actually even implement STIG controls within all of our solutions that would support this hybrid type cloud scenario. So it's very focused on the government's requirements, specifically those of DoD. We take it very seriously, and we have many DoD customers who are taking advantage of some of the security capabilities we bake into the product right up front.
All right, Vish, you get the last two words. Give me the roundup.
Absolutely. Indifferent of what we spoke about today, everything comes back to the human, like Michael said. So when you look at a hybrid first approach, when you look at a cloud first approach, it's really our responsibility as a private public sector to come together to enable the warfighter at the end. So Jason, appreciate you having us today, and thank you for the time.
All right, I know there's obviously we could talk a lot more. There's a lot to dig into here, but unfortunately we are out of time. So let me thank my guest. Mike Malloret is the Technical Director for Public Sector at Veritas Technologies. Mike, thanks so much for taking the time.
Thank you for having me today.
And Vishal Amin is the General Manager of Security Solutions for Defense at Microsoft Federal. Vishal, thanks as well for taking the time to join us.
Always a pleasure. Thank you.
Vishal, pleasure working with you here today too as well. I look forward to working with you in the future, sir.
Likewise, Mike, and thanks for the partnership.
I'm Jason Miller, and you're listening to Federal News Network. Now let me send you back to the studio for more from the DoD Cloud Exchange.